had your OMG moment for perhaps. We're going to talk about what do you do now that you've got them. And so this is going to be a two-part process this morning, and in a little less than an hour, we're going to accomplish two things. One is give you an overview of the process, what it looks like, and secondly, with some volunteers or voluntold, depending, I'll do a little mini mock feedback session so you can actually see it happen. Will that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to waste any time. Thanks for sitting up front, dear. You're so helpful. Everything we're going to work on today is in this toolkit. Even the words you possibly can say as you conduct your sessions are in here. If you would lose this, besides our wonderful talent here as a resource, it's also available to you on the website. So it's called the Employee Engagement Toolkit. So as you well know, the people are the key to our success and fulfilling mission, vision, and values for our health system. So having their feedback has always been a part of your process here at Hancock. However, having the ability to externally benchmark is different this time, right? This is the first time in a while that we've been able to actually go out there and say, how do we compare to the rest of the world? So we'll spend some time on why employee engagement is important, but we're also going to talk a lot more about the what and the how of next steps. So that's the whole point of this contact. And really, sometimes it's hard to remember, but this is actually a gift. And I'm not going to throw all the evidence that's up there. There's tons of evidence about the correlations between employee engagement and organizational outcomes. But I think the one that resonates no matter where you work is the direct correlation between employee engagement and safety. And as employee engagement goes up, what we see, safety risk for those that we serve goes down. And also what we also find, this is a study coming out of UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, long tenured partner with Student Group, and they continue to produce the same evidence year after year after year as they study their outcomes relative to employee engagement and quality and safety. So if we think about what we do in the delivery of care and services within our department or division, higher employee engagement is going to result in better outcomes for you and for the team and for those you serve. So when we look at your results, and thank you for, we had a great call a week or so ago to go through the results and kind of align our work here. I was not surprised, but extremely excited for you to look at these results. To have those percentages of your employees either actively engaged or engaged is extraordinary. I was actually yesterday down at Columbus Regional, your friend down the road, Columbus, Indiana, another high-performing employee engagement, and your cultures are so much alike, it's just incredible. And was bragging on your results to them as well. But to come out of the gate with your first externally benchmarked survey in a long time and see this level of engagement, you need to give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah, we've got work to do, but extraordinary results. So congrats. And I want to just do a little bit of a discussion about what engaged and the varied levels of engagement. Now, my nomenclature isn't exactly aligned with your strategic, but the intent is pretty much the same. And so when you think about those employees in your department that are highly engaged, how would you describe them? What do they do? How do they act? What's their work like?
I work with passion and feel a profound connection to their company, drive.
You gotta love him, right?
Well,
you were going to say something over here, ladies. Let's ignore Rob for the moment. They go above and beyond. You don't even have to ask them, do you?
No.
Right?
What else? To work on time.
They show up on time, if not early.
Yes. Show up.
Will they volunteer for extra shifts from time to
Yes.
time? Do you ever have to worry about the quality or integrity of their work? No. But then we have another group sometimes, and I'm going to call them the not engaged, and I call these the people that potentially are retired on the job. Sometimes can be the case, but they do what they have to do to get by. Not the people that you see as your formal or informal leaders within your department. They may have potential to be, but you've got to tap it, and it's going to take a little work on your behalf. And then there's what we call the actively disengaged. And I'm not going to give Rob the opportunity to read this. But basically what we're talking about, those are the people that you can identify probably in a nanosecond. Your family knows about them. Your spouse or significant other knows them by name. And they're the ones that take a lot of your time to keep them performing at some level, shall we say. So we go through that, and this is Gallup's definition, but they're working towards elevation of your employee engagement is actually going to help you accelerate achievement of anything that you possibly can do. And I think this slide from your results was pretty telling to me. As well, and this one you may have seen yesterday, but we look at the turnover rates here. And this isn't working too well. Let me track the mouse. If you look at the impact on turnover, those that are actively engaged have a far less turnover rate than those that are actively disengaged. And according to the analysis that your friends at Strategic have done, this is almost an $850,000 expense to this organization with the disengagement. So doing something with our results is absolutely compelling, because not only is it churn for you and trying to staff your department or your division, it's also taxing on your team members when they constantly have new members moving forward. And then it's all of the staffing issues that go with that, quality, productivity, and it goes on and on and on. So while I can remember the very first time as a nurse leader I got my employee engagement survey. Now I got a gift in more ways than one, because the survey was done on the last manager that got fired, so it wasn't on me. So I was like, phew. But here's the reality. Despite what your results may be, if you have underperformed in comparison to where you'd like to be, but reality is, here is our chance, based on your team's feedback, to become an even better leader. They truly are giving us a gift, because how often do you get feedback directly from your team members about how we as a health system, or me as a leader, actually are performing? And it's hard, but this whole process that we're about to go through is actually how you can truly make a difference and make your employees feel like they're more valued, at the same time actually elevate your results. And I believe we're talking about a repeat or a resurvey 12 to 18 months, somewhere out there. So we know if we move through this process as we're coaching you today, you can influence the results that you're going to get on the next survey. It will work. So here's another great shout out to you, because coming out of the gate and having participation rates this high is extraordinary. I would imagine, if we get a 50% participation rate, we're happy as an industry. You have top quartile, top decile participation rates. And that's thanks to you and the leadership you've provided. It also means that you have a very, very strong and robust database now to work from. Nobody can question the N to say it's not statistically significant and the like. So you need to give yourselves a pat on the back for achieving these. And I doubt from these numbers if there's anybody that didn't hit their LEM goal relative to participation rates, because we wouldn't be getting that 93% or that 81% if you hadn't done your homework. So that's at least a LEM level 3 just on participation rates, if not higher. So congrats. So when we look at the hospital side of it, what we saw is we've got some real great strengths here around service quality, job satisfaction, and the like. We had opportunities mostly around compensation and communication. I'm hoping this isn't the first time you've seen this. You saw this yesterday, perhaps, when Ms. Walker went through that. Then when we look at the physician network, lots of great stuff about Dr. Flink. Anybody said thank you to him lately? That was pretty awesome. And a lot of good things relative to the leadership that's going on within the network. Again, opportunities around communication consistent throughout the health system. No surprise there. Staffing and resource management benefits. Comp model basically comes to the table. I was telling the senior team, I've been around employee engagement for a very long time now. Probably going back to the early 80s with the first work I did with it. But there is a kind of a lens out there when you look at employee engagement. And that is that if your employees are talking about compensation and food, that means you've arrived, because you've gotten rid of mostly all the low-hanging fruit that's out there. And so I have absolute confidence the senior team's gonna tackle these from a health system standpoint. Comp may not be something we can do within our individual departments, but I have absolute confidence we're gonna move through these and elevate these even better than where we are today. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and we talk about, now that you've had the results, what the heck do you do with them? And while it may seem onerous, actually I want to simplify it. And sometimes we do really well with flowcharts. And I believe this is actually the second page in your toolkit that you have. It's literally a 9-step process that will walk you through every single step on how to do it. So the first thing to do is get the survey done. So you're already through the first 2 steps on this. That was explaining what the survey is about, getting people to participate. So now we're down to 7 steps to work on. And we're gonna do each step as we move forward. So the first step in the process is to know your data. So yesterday you got to see it probably for the first time. You wanna spend a little time getting to understand that information a little better. Be confident in how, in what it's telling you. Because the first thing that we'll do as we move forward with our communication with our staff is identify at least 2 or 3 things that you've done really well in the survey, and 2 or 3 that were your higher performing indicators in the survey, and 2 or 3 areas that you might wanna work on. We'll vet those with our staff, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but look also across your data saying, are there any patterns and themes? Because we go back here and we looked at the health system, there were some patterns and themes that showed up. The communication and comp showing up on both sides of the health system. We had staffing showing up on both sides. So you look at your own department and across the health system and see if that matches out. Also, thanks to our folks at Strategic, you've got what I call a priority index. The things that are key drivers to employee engagement, you want to pay attention to those and select from those sections first as your strengths and opportunities. Because what the evidence shows is that if we move those couple questions, it will move the rest of your questions as well. It's almost like a halo effect. And get your stuff together in order to conduct your meeting. I'll show you a little bit about what that can look like in a minute. So that's step 1. Go through your data, know it, and be ready. So the next part is really about what we expect from you as leaders over the next, we'll finalize a timeline this afternoon, probably over the next 30, 45 days, is we're gonna conduct feedback sessions with our own teams. Steve's doing it from the health system at the forums and other places, but each one of us as leaders are expected to conduct feedback session or sessions, depending upon how big your department is, sharing your results with your staff and engaging them in elevation of the results from developing a 90-day plan. Part of the things that we have to do in order to really move this is sometimes we have to take a deep breath and be willing to take the feedback. It's not always pleasant, but actually for most of you, it isn't painful. You may not be as high as you'd like to be, but your results are not unrespectable by any means. They are highly respectable. We want to involve our staff in the decisions about how we're going to move forward, and we want their participation. So we have to lay some ground rules, so to speak, as we go into our feedback sessions about what this is about. It's a confidential process. It's based on their results. It's based on their feedback. We need to engage them in conversation. And we will actually, as we conduct that session, validate that we've got the right things to work on, summarize what we've come up with, and then we will actually vote on as a team in our meetings what we're going to work on. Because we may brainstorm a long laundry list, but we can only accomplish 1 or 2 things in a given period of time. So I'll show you how you can vote on what that looks like. And then after we voted, we'll take that top 3 list, actually engage our staff in development and form teams, if possible, on moving that result forward. You with me so far? So we've got to know our results, be prepared to conduct a feedback or feedback sessions, depending upon the volume of your team staff, and we're going to show you how to actually operate those sessions. Probably between now and I would imagine, I'm guessing, you'll get formal communication after today, but probably by the end of July that all of us would have completed that process. As you think about the brainstorming that your team does, look for what I call low hanging fruit. What are the couple, one or two things that you can do quickly that shows people that you've got traction and that you are actually executing on what they said, and move with those really quickly, because that will gain you credibility with results planning. So with developing your action plan, we've talked about having the staff identify what those 2 or 3 things are, or your team developing those 2 or 3 things that we're going to work on, having them own when possible, leadership or planning around that. I also wanted to bring you back on having some really defined and clear expectations about what that plan is going to look like. I think you guys are familiar with something called the 90-day plan. You ever seen one of those?
No.
Yeah. That exact template you can utilize for your action planning relative to employee engagement survey. And actually, our coaching to you is your LEM, the people pillar, either your retention goal or your employee engagement participation rate goal. That's where your action plan for the employee engagement survey will actually live. So we're not going to have competing plans. We're going to use it all in the same space. So we'll go under the people pillar, and we will actually write down what it is our team's decided. So if I was going to write my 90-day plan right now for July, because the next quarter starts in a couple weeks, my first action step under the people pillar, under the employee engagement survey, or retention or reduction of turnover, whichever goal you have, is conduct my employee engagement feedback sessions. That's number 1 step, right? Number 2 is based on the 90-day, the 3 objectives that they come after that were things that we're going to do. I put those 3 things in there and what we're doing about them, and then continue your progress. Now you're also aligning back to the high-fi boards and everything else that you've got in place, all the way to the frontline bonuses where you're sharing plans and outcomes with your staff. So not competing forces, but rather aligning the work. Is that making sense to you? So you're not going to change the goal of participation rate in the employee engagement survey, because that's a done deal. But now we're actually working on the next employee engagement survey, either participation rate or outcomes, by working the plan for employee engagement off of these results. What questions so far? Sometimes it seems so simple, but it's hard when you have to do it the first time. So there's lots of ways you can have your team decide what the 2 or 3 priorities are for you to work on under your categories. One of the most commonly used is called multi-voting. Has anybody ever used multi-voting before? It's a really scientific process. Actually, it is. But we'll do it in the demonstration I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. But basically, everybody would get 3 votes. Every employee that's participating in the session will get 3 votes. They have the ability to vote 1 time on 3 things, 3 times on 1 thing. It's their ability to prioritize the list. And you can do that either through raising of hands, writing on a flip chart. But one of the things that we find probably a visually appealing and helpful is I call it the dot exercise. And that you're probably going to have flip charts up that you're actually writing these brainstorms on. And I give everybody 3 little dots. And once we get the list created and flushed out and we know what it means, we give everybody their 3 dots and let them get up, which is also key, physical activity. Let them get up and put their dots where they want it to be. And now you have a really great visual of what the urgency is around priority setting. It also lets the team see what the group as an aggregate has decided, as opposed to my one lone voice. So I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, because we're gonna do a mini session. What questions can they answer for you at this point?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If you have to break it into two groups, say, because you can't get everybody together, how does that concept work?
So then I bring it back to you, the next, you can leave them hanging up in the department so they can see them, but you're gonna have to pull that together and communicate it back out, going after we've completed more than one session. Here's what the
So they wouldn't
prioritized
vote
list.
until after everybody in your department created the list?
Do it in the session that you're in.
Okay,
So we would vote in the session that we're conducting, and then we do the next session and they would vote. And then as the leader, I'm gonna have to take those votes and put them back together. And
so you wouldn't necessarily tell the second session what the first session,
Mhm.
okay.
No. It doesn't mean you can't, but if you want their candor, you want their feedback
Sure.
during the session. But with multiple sessions, which many of you are gonna have to do, you're gonna have to pull it together and then re-communicate out, here is the prioritized list. And if we get the people to volunteer to work on certain actions during the session, then you already have your teams ready
Sure.
to move. Good question. What other ones are on your mind? So once you know what your items are, you've got some teams, we need to give them some parameters to work within, and this is all represented in the flow chart, but what it's talking about is that we need to give them due dates and expectations, set them up for success. It could be that their first action plan or report out is due at the next staff meeting. But the point is, if we leave it open-ended, we won't get consistent results. So give them some very flexible and responsible, but yet objective outcomes that they're supposed to come to. All right. And then once we wrap up that meeting, where we go to next is we have them evaluate the meeting. Now, this process looks a little different than what we typically do in other sessions, in that you do have an evaluation tool. It's right in the handout. It's tool G in the handout. But the process is going to look a little different. So going into the meeting, I have a blank envelope, and we ask someone at the conclusion of the end of the meeting to be the collector of the evaluations. All participants complete the evaluation. The evaluation basically talks about how helpful this was, did they have a good understanding, was it objective, yada, yada, yada. That person collects those evaluations, puts them in a sealed envelope, and hands them off to someone that is not the leader for the department. Now, we have to work on who that's gonna be and what that process looks like. And Laura, for the sake of my practice, I made it you just because I had to pick somebody. But what we want is someone else to look at those results first and make sure there aren't any landmines in it, because we're really trying to maintain integrity and move forward from there. So someone from the participants collects the evaluations, puts them in sealed envelopes, and forwards them to the designated person. You with me?
That's for every meeting?
Every meeting. Yep. Good stuff, folks.
Hey, Deb, quick.
Yes, Mr. Rock.
Can you back up just a second? So, what do you do with, you conduct a feedback session, either multiples of or single, and part of the feedback is things you guys can work on, the team. One of our issues is communication, right? So, to me, part of that is beyond us.
It could be.
Could be, right, we're not communicating with other departments, up, down, across the organization. So some of that work expands beyond us. Meaning I gotta have a conversation with Mary about stuff, and we then have to work on that. So, but if I vote in my group, the top three, and we pick, and Mary identifies and picks her top three, and in those selections of the top three isn't this cross-functional communication work because we didn't know to do that. That could be a miss, and I wouldn't want to miss that. So is there a method by which if relevant feedback comes forth that says, somebody better be talking to Mary's group so that collectively we're working together, because we hold hands a lot in our exchange. How do you make that happen?
Yes, there's a couple ways about it. There are certain things that you're gonna develop brainstorming lists about that are relative to how the department functions. Those are the things that the team can help execute and elevate. There's some other things that'll pop up that are truly leadership of them. And while the team is working on these 2 or 3 things, that doesn't prevent me from the leader as carrying forward with this other one. So they feel like we're all in. But the other part, especially relative to communication, because it did show up, is part of what we need to talk about during our engagement survey process is, what is our communication relative to what we're doing here? So you end up driving it anyhow, even though it may not have bubbled to the top. You're gonna do what's right because you're a great leader and reaching out to Mary, even if it didn't make it to your top 3 list with your team. And your top 3 list may only be top 3 for 4 or 5 months, because if you've nailed it, then bring those lists back up and say, okay, now let's go to the next 2 or 3 and work on those for the next several months. Does that help you out? Generate more questions? What?
No, what I heard you say is there will be departmental specific work. If identified either through my own means or through the group's means that these departments need to do things, then I can conduct a session with Mary and say, hey, did you hear that? Because I heard that, and what are we gonna do?
Still keep it.
Or it comes to executive leadership, because some things will be pointing to us, right, if we don't do well or we should do better. So even though it's not a departmental specific work item, we gotta tweak it into executives.
Because of the executive team, we have an obligation to drive the overall health system's results and action plan those results. I'm up there too.
So Deb,
Always say thought leader.
is there ever a need, an opportunity where the folks in this room are a group? And
Yes.
we do this with this?
So the executive team would do this with this group,
Okay.
or with the director group, or whatever group you wanna call it. Yeah. We pulled out the results for those in that level of, and that ends up being almost your key drivers in your health system improvement plan.
Okay.
Now, employee voice obviously comes to the table, but, yeah, because they're your employees. Good. What other questions are running through your mind? So everything I've shown you or talked about in here is actually in the group, in this handout. So I know you took, there's a slide deck, but I'd rather you use this as your toolkit, because literally, if you turn to, you need to put page numbers in this darn thing. Turn to page 1. The page that goes the employee forum agenda. This is where Steve's already working on this and sharing the 50,000 foot results with your staff in this upcoming forum. So we've already got that moving. Then as you move back to the next page, literally your entire flow that we just went through is described to you in that section that talks about leaders roll out results to staff. Right there's all the steps we just went through.
I don't see the multi-voting and instructions. Do they
So-
put it in here?
It's in, there is a vote on the second, oh, you're sneaky in.
Clearly.
You're on. Okay. So we talked about voting committing. I just gave you one example of how you can do that. You can do it in any way, shape, or form you'd like to. The next page in the toolkit I'd like you to look at is, there's literally the conversation and how you can conduct your sessions written out for you in case you feel uncomfortable and want to practice. So for instance, if you're going to introduce the meeting, talk about, it says on the right side that we did our employee engagement survey at Hancock Health. we have a high participation rate, whatever it is. Thanks for coming, not only filling out the survey, but, so you see what I'm saying? You don't have to think about what to say if you need to, don't know what to do. It's right there for you. And then if you flip to the next page, there's that magic little flow chart. It talks about what to do with your plans. The one you saw on the screen. So it's right there for you. So I want to reduce your anxiety to say right here, here's your, pardon my inference, but here's your employee engagement Bible for action planning results. We just follow this. We're, go first. Pardon? Yes, ma'am.
So are the associates going to kind of give the results of the overall at all?
So now that we have these slides, I'm going to update the presentation. So the folks that have come through the all associate meeting so far have only seen the participation rate, because that's all we have. From this point through, we'll throw a couple of these things up here. It's basically just to let them know we got the results back. Expect that your director is going to be working with you now.
Good question. All right, so who wants to be, do I have any volunteers to be my department as I run us through a mini, I demonstrate a mini survey?
I have a question. Do we have a responsibility to, since the employees are not going to get a lot of house-wide detail, or actually handicap health detail, should we go down that path before we go down our departmental path?
You're gonna see it. Actually, the first thing we do is we show the overall system results in our session and say, these are the ones that you may have heard Steve talk about in the forums, or you haven't seen yet. I know he shared with you the participation rate for the health system. Let me share with you what the overall results look like for the networking for the hospital, and then we'll dive into our departmental results.
So the team is gonna hand those out to everybody? Okay, all right.
And did we get those yesterday? Is that the most engagement demographic report?
That's these that we're talking about.
Okay.
There's three
Okay.
pieces here. You'll see it as we actually do our session. I do the participation rate, the overall highest and lowest scoring results for the hospital and for the physician network. Are those in the handout sheet here?
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
I was gonna do this run charts, but they were a little busy to see on the screen, so I just went with the grids instead. You can do what makes sense for you.
It's also in the slide deck from yesterday.
There you go.
Strategic presentations from yesterday. And I'll send those out electronically as well.
Who wants to, do I have 6 volunteers to be my department? And I'll show you how to do get one of these. Oh, Lord.
I'll do it.
Come on. Bring your chairs, come on up
We
here.
have to bring our chairs?
Well, if you want to sit, I don't think you want to sit. And we're not going to go through the whole master thing. I'm going to do one strength and one opportunity just to demonstrate how to do it. Bring your chairs on, come on up. Thank you.
We don't need any papers then?
No. So I use kind of do a semicircle that faces the screen for me, guys. Oh, wow. My department grew. That's great. Well, thank you very much, guys, for being here with me today. As we talked about, we recently completed the employee engagement survey, and on behalf of myself and all of us at Hancock Health, I can't thank you enough for taking time to do that survey. You truly gave me a gift back on how to be a better leader for you. So today what we're going to do is spend time looking at our results and talking about, okay, you spoke, now what? Kind of you spoke, we listened, and working through the plan. So over the next 60 or 90 minutes, depending on how enlightened or passionate you feel, we'll work through the results, develop steps, and talk about how you're going to do progress. Does that sound like what you expected today? Yes. Well, I wanted to start off with some kind of celebration. I think Steve shared this with you in the forums, but extraordinary participation rates of people taking a survey throughout the entire health system. And that you're going to see that that's reflected in our department as well. to have 83% of our associates do the survey is pretty meaningful to all of us, so thank you for that. And as we move forward, I wanted to review, because some of you who were at the earlier forums and may not have seen the early results because they weren't available at that time, what's going on in the health system relative to results. And so we're going to start off with the hospital. And what we see is, when we look at the results, the strengths were relative to people extremely proud to say that they work for Hancock Health. That patients' engagement and patient experience is a priority for them. I mean, those are like 90% of you guys said that that was high. Your love of the work you do as a health system at the hospital, 94%, really strong. All of these are above 90, and that's incredible. I think the thing that was kind of encouraging to me was that I plan to be a part of Hancock Health for at least the next year. That really means great things to the, what kind of department do you guys want to be? What are we going to do? Are we going to be a finance department? You want to be nursing? Okay. That's fine. It also means that you won't have a lot of churn with the staff that you're working with, and that makes it easier for us to do better work. We do have things we can get better on. Even though we've got some higher performance, we're not where we want to be on a few things. And there's a couple of them that kind of jumped out for us. It's relative to the organization's communication strategy. There's also some dialogue going on relative to compensation or the pay and wage and salary stuff. Don't know what the final outcome will be about that, but this matters and it's being examined. We're also looking at our staffing levels. So that was the hospital's big picture up here. And now we're going to flip over and look at the network. Lots of great things relative to leadership in the network. Again, very, very high, very strong results overall on these categories. A lot of retention. Again, I plan to be a part of Hancock Health a year from now. Oh, sorry. Lots of great things about the medical director here for Dr. Candace. If you see him, give him a high five because he was a superstar in this. And a lot of great things about the office and the clinical managers and the whole team out there. I think when we look at the opportunities for the network, we see some of the same things popping up that we saw at the hospital. We see communication coming up, staffing and resources, some comments about benefits. So the network will also be working on this as well. So I just wanted to kind of give you where we started from as the health system, and then we're going to kind of dive into ours. So this is us. I was really excited to see over 70% of you guys did the survey, so that means it's a good, solid set of information for us to work from. And thank you very much, because truly, I really take it seriously, and it matters to me, so having your feedback's awesome. Is there anybody here that has any comments, or what comments do you have about our 71% participation rate? You surprised? Good, bad, what?
So one person refused.
Yeah. Interesting. But that might mean I need to do a little better job of communication. So, and maybe doing this process, I'll help with that next time. Anticipate we'll repeat the survey probably in a year to year and a half. Give us time to actually work on what we've got this month.
What goes into non-capture? To me, it's, you either did it or we couldn't reach you or you were.
All right, Mr. Holcomb, I need help on that one.
What was your question?
Not captured, what does that mean?
That was people that didn't complete the survey, so.
So they stopped somewhere along the line, didn't finish. Good question.
Then I'll point out the unreachable, that just means people, we didn't have the contact information that was correct to reach.
Any other questions you want to ask about these things before while he's here to answer them for us? So good stuff. So your vision is not blurry. I had to copy and paste from a PDF and it was a little tough. I would do these normally on a flip chart, put them up there, but because of being able to display for you guys, I had to put here. So I went back and I looked at our results and I wanted to pull out a few things. These are our department's results here on the 7th floor. And what we did really, really well with a lot of things. Most of it was about your pride of being part of Hancock at 100%. That your job matches the expectations that you thought when you were hired at 100%. Department orientation gave you the right tools to be successful. Again, a really incredible thing. Still plan to be with Hancock a year from now, and you'd recommend this is a great place to work. Those are kind of the top performers in our area. These are nothing to sneeze about by any means. Knowing that our patients' experience results are stellar, and that you're satisfied with working here, and that you would recommend this place to others as a place to work. So, pretty admirable work there. Yeah, that's not to say we don't have places we can get better. So let's flip over and look at those in a few minutes. So when I went back here and I looked at what are our strengths, I did want to understand a few things a little bit more. So I pulled out 2 areas that weren't into 100%, but boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to get them to 100%. And I kind of wanted to ask you a few questions. So when we think about the climate and morale section of the survey, it was that one about, I feel proud to work at Hancock, I plan to be here a year, overall I'm satisfied with working at Hancock. I really wanted to hear from you or get your ideas about what's going well that makes you feel that way about this health system today. What are you thinking when you answer that question? Because there are things that we want to keep doing and I don't want to stop if they're working for you.
I enjoy working with my coworkers.
Why is that, Tracy?
It's a good sense of teamwork. Just that I like the vision and mission, just where we're going and where the hospital's going.
Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking when you say where the hospital's going. What's going on that you think works for you?
What works for me is that it matches my values and the things that we're doing in the community and the things that we're doing in the department. I just really like all those things, and that I would have a good sense of camaraderie in our team, and it just jives.
And everything we've been saying here is confidential. Just patterns and themes are the things I would carry out, but your feedback is really, really important. So I'd love to hear from all of you. What else is working for the rest of you that makes you feel that passionate about this work, this health system?
We want to get what Hancock means to our community. Economic engine that we are. Everybody looks up to Hancock.
So Rick, our image is pretty strong from your lens. What other thoughts come to mind?
I've just had from a community standpoint, I think everybody here is passionate about making a difference in the community, not only with the clinical care that goes on, but outside the walls.
So you guys are really supporting some local food banks here in the department, things like that. Are those things that make you feel this good about Hancock, or are there other things we should take on that you think would help us be even more of a contributor? I'm winging this, guys, because I have no clue what they're going to tell me. And there's nothing but you get my feel of, review the questions. Don't forget to find out what's going right. Don't, because you don't want to lose it. We assume that we're going to change something, and the reality is if we change it, we don't know that that's the right thing to change. So we have more dialogue and we talk about orientation and get their feedback about what's working well with orientation. And you'll get a little bit of the things that might get better. My point is harvest what's still going well. So now let's look at where we could get even better. So we've got a couple things that I pulled up here, but I want to make sure these are the right things for you. So the first one was relative to orientation. Even though it was strong on our strengths, it did show that it 50% favorable. My job duties were fully described during the interview. Teamwork is good in my department, one of our strengths, but also still an opportunity at 52%. I do want you to know that on the interview process, our return, the number of people that identified that were two. So I don't know if that factors into your thoughts. My supervisor effectively handles employee issues and concern at 52. Sufficient staff in my department for workload, 55, 56. The amount of work I'm expected to do is really 57. Since Hi-Fi came in place, I've noticed improvement in communication throughout the organization at 65. My ideas and suggestions are given consideration, 61. And I feel comfortable working on my I feel comfortable voicing my opinions and offering suggestions, 64. So I just did some simple look to say, okay, what were the lower performing ones in here, and pulled these 3 out. The job duties were fully described during my interview. Teamwork is good in my department, and my supervisor effectively handles employee issues or concerns as maybe the places we want to start to do our performance improvement activities. Are those the right ones from your lens?
They seem appropriate because much of what I do appears to be the other duties as assigned.
Right.
Clearly in the job description.
Okay, all right. What are the rest of you thinking? My point being, even though we know what the numbers say, we still need to validate with this group that those are the right things to work on. So once we did that, and let's say these were the 3 we pulled out, I'm gonna ask the same questions. What are we currently doing that we don't wanna change? And then if we were doing this better, what would we be doing differently? And the reason I say it that way is it doesn't feel as personal, and I can be a little more objective and step back and listen if it doesn't have the word, what am I doing wrong in it? Because what we want to see is what's their vision for future state, and then work towards it. This is where the brainstorming will come up, and we'll write them all on flip charts. And we'll have, 20 things that we think we could do. If you're not comfortable presenting your results, folks, it's okay to have some other leader from human resources or your one-up leader be in the room or conduct those with you, if you're uncomfortable. So guys, for the sake of demonstration, let's stay on orientation, right? So when we think about the orientation process we've got right now, guys, what do you like about it?
I was just gonna say, I like the fact that several departments participate in it, which I think engages associates and introduces them to different people in the organization.
I'm just gonna throw these up on the screen so the group can see what we're thinking. So we're working on orientation, right? You like the fact that we've got multiple
Leaders.
Don't look at spelling. Did I catch it? Multiple leaders participating on boarding.
I like that we have executives come and talk to us about what Hancock Health is all about. And all of the leaders that she mentioned always brought it back to the sense of community, both as a Hancock Health family and community as part of Greenfield and Hancock. It was a connecting message.
Don't watch me type. What else do you like?
And just that the whole first 2 days is, although a huge amount of information, really gives you a great overview and insight into the hospital itself.
What else? All right, so let's think about what you'd like to do differently with our orientation. What are your brainstorms?
Seems that much, the overview is fabulous, but once we get into the department, it seems like it's not specific enough for me to know my job duties appropriately. I just kind of feel like we got thrown in there.
So Rick, if we currently have in place kind of an orientation checklist. Talk to me about what you, I said Rick, but it's all of you. Is that tool the right tool? Do we need to work on it? Do we need to re-engineer it? What do you think?
Well, I I just feel like we have this checklist and the process, how things are explained to me by my preceptor, and then how I see other coworkers do the same thing is different. Everybody seems like we're told something different in how to do it. It's confusing.
Okay, so what will we need to do differently? We've got preceptors teaching one ways, one I'm hearing, and then reality's different.
Yeah, I think having even preceptors do it differently among themselves, I feel like maybe, keeping preceptors abreast or reminding them the right way, the Hancock way.
Think about one or two procedures that come to mind that you think might be a great place to focus to start with. Where do you think those would be?
Blood transfusions.
Any others? The rest of you?
Although Meditech is just a wonderful tool. I believe that there's multiple ways of doing things within Meditech, and it's kind of hardwiring approach to documentation. Serve benefit to standardization work.
So are you thinking that it's what we write, or is it that our, what do I want to say? Our templates need work?
Well, there's always improvement to be made with templates. Work with them.
This is bigger than us.
Take a lot of work with them department to figure out what standard work is first, and then maybe improvements could be made to the templates and our processes to make that better.
To add to that, I would say that there is functionality within the system that we don't use, but there's a few people that know it and they use it, but the rest of us don't know.
And to reducing variances, I would also say maybe any of the standard practices with our CMS measures like fall, concussion, sepsis, screening, any of those, things like that, that would need standardization and training that are done the exact way that we would need to do all the time.
And when you say need to do, Teresa, are you thinking how we're documenting it, actually providing the care?
All of the above, because we do excellent protocols on all of those things. When you talk about the fall prevention policy, we have good processes in place for, and there's equipment to go with that, and how to do the bands on there's a screening tool in that attack, and then there's the brake bands and the magnets on the door and the no pass zone, to bundle all of that process together.
And so we keep going. You see, my whole point is keep diving deeper until you can get to the specifics. So because we're coming up on time, we're gonna, so guys, you have some really great ideas, and I wanna make sure we're focused on the ones that are most important to you. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is kind of vote this thing up. So I'm gonna give each one of you 3 dots, and what you can do, these reflect your 3 votes. And so you have the opportunity to put a dot on 3 things. You could put 3 dots on one thing. What I'm trying to do is get from you the prioritization that you want us to work through here. What's the most important thing? So this is your chance to make your voice matter. And so I'm going to invite you to come up and just put your dots around that, what you think that needs to be. Do I need to explain that voting process better for you? So this is your chance.
So we should
Come on here. I thought the same thing. Just play. What's on up there?
It just says kick me, don't worry.
That's good. But do you see what happens when you use the dots? You don't have to start there seeing those count check marks. All of a sudden you get a visual of where they want to be. So now I'd say, great. So based on what I'm seeing, our most popular items to work on is revising our orientation and looking at standardizing how we're doing some important pieces of work, so that there's not variance between the preceptors and what they're actually seeing when they get out there. Great. So I'm going to need help doing that. I know a number of you have some passion around there. Who would like to help me work on these two things to get started? Tracy, you will? Great. Anybody else want to help us with that? All right, thank you so much. Because what we're going to do, we'll have another session of these later on with the other group, and then I'll bring it all back together and make sure that these priorities still line up. If they do, I'm going to be tapping on you to help me move through this. And what we'll do is, once we know what those three priorities are, then we'll put some teams together, because you guys are closest to the work, and it's really important to me that I understand what works for you, and we'll kind of craft a plan. So you can expect to know that we're going to pull all the results together from the feedback sessions, share that back out as to what the top three things we're going to work on, who the team members are going to be, and then we'll develop an actual 90-day plan to move those results and get through making this better. And we'll talk about it at staff meeting. I'll talk to you about it when I'm rounding on you. There'll be things in the stoplight report and other places, because I want to make sure that you know that we're actually moving through this. Once we get through those first couple things, we may move on to the next set of things. So as you think about that, what questions can I answer for you at the moment? I will know exactly what that timeline is going to look like after we conduct the next couple sessions, because you guys are group one. We'll have groups, we have 2 more groups to do. And then I anticipate that I should be able to get back to you by the end of the month at the latest, if the schedule goes the way we planned it, with what all this looks like pulled together.
So if you're having different groups with different numbers of people, will the top three that we came up with may not even be the top 3?
Or they might be.
Right.
We don't know until we
Right.
get there.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like when we have staff meeting, we have that one in the morning and we talk about things, and we think about things, and we have one in the evening, and everything has to come back together. Same process will happen.
What are we gonna look at to know that this worked?
So, there's a couple things. Number one, I want to make sure that I'm getting feedback from you. So as I round with you, I'll be asking questions about how's the new process working? Do we still need to continue to work through it? In about 6 months, we're going to do another kind of sit still and say, okay, here's what we said we were going to work on. How did we do? And so we'll check back in and do that regularly to make sure that we're making progress. Did that answer or address your need?
It does, but is there a number that we're trying to move someplace, or?
Not at this moment. Our biggest goal at this particular, for your metrics board, was relative to how many people participated in the survey, and we had 71% of the department that did that. So that's kind of one and done. But now moving this so that next time we won't necessarily focus as much. I mean, we still want participation. Obviously, the more people that have their voice, the better. But we'll actually look at 1 or 2 of the quite key questions that we want to move the results on.
What do we do in the event of 2 different shifts have completely different ideas and there's a tie? Or worse yet, there might not be a tie and one shift feels like they lose their voice because
Yes,
another
there's a couple
shift
different
doesn't
ways
work.
we can go about it, depending upon how often that comes up or how big that is. We might be able to tackle both lists. I don't know until I see what it looks like, but we'll have a conversation about that when it happens. So Rick, you and I hung earlier, one of the things that's important to me is we evaluate today's meeting, and we volunteered to be the collector of reevaluation, is that right? Okay, well, check out that minute. What were you gonna say about that?
I was just gonna, stepping out of our example here, as we looked at the overall hospital, and some of our departments reflect the whole compensation and resource management. You know, those are from an individual department standpoint, can be a little challenging to deal with because it's a little bit broader. And if we are going well, compensation, resource management, that makes it a little tougher from a departmental standpoint to do actionable type things.
Yeah, so with the comp model, what I would say is, because you know you don't have actual control over that, but to gather some information from them on what they're seeing, experiencing, feeling, or hearing is powerful. You're gonna have to own that one as the leader, to say, no promises, but your input is invaluable. I want you to know senior team is looking at it. I want to take what your thoughts were to that conversation. And then with the staffing, productivity, workload things, that's where I engage them into some lean thinking about what are we doing now that we don't need to keep doing. You know, we don't have FTEs falling off the trees. I would say it to them that way. But the reality is they know best about what things we could do better and engage them that way. And then working on the top of the FTEs here, if it makes sense. You've got Truman and all kinds of other things to help guide it. So here I would pass out the evaluations, tell them that Rick's gonna be collecting and putting in a sealed envelope and thanking them for their participation.
And where does Rick take it? Where is it?
In this case, I've got to have him take it to Laura Hayes, but we have to decide that this afternoon, where the evaluations go.
Recipient of all the.
We don't know that yet. For the sake of this example, I didn't know. We have to decide that this afternoon. Just like.
Question. So are we just supposed to share with our department just the strengths and weaknesses, or to share the whole report with them?
I don't know that you're gonna have time to share the whole report. I think you, from the health system, you're gonna wanna do the whole, just the high level stuff. Departmentally, it's your call what you share and how much time you got, but you wanna prioritize action planning on those. Questions?
Deb, I noticed that you focused on the strengths, and then they had a comment section around the strengths. Would you also do that with the weaknesses or the opportunities? Whenever you first went over the results, the orientation was actually
No.
that was shown.
So it showed up in both places.
It did show up in both places, okay.
It showed up as a strength and an opportunity. So
Okay.
it's gonna get hit both ways.
All right.
You saw that in a couple of them.
I think the N number is.
That makes sense.
Then he's 2 on the first one, on the opportunities.
The question is that you're higher, and if it's the true.
And that's where you've gotta ask questions. What did that mean to you? Was this helpful? Seriously.
Yes.
If we need to re-engineer for the next session, I need your feedback. What would you do differently? The next group. So get you out of here.